Well, hello everybody, and we're so glad that you could join us for another early childhood discussion and a conscious conversation. The podcast from the Grow New Jersey Kids Technical Assistance Center North. And today I am very pleased to have with me Jean Budd, who is from the Center for Autism and Early Childhood Mental Health at Montclair State University. And she is here to talk with us about infant and early childhood mental health consultation. So Jean, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know that you folks at the center have been really, really busy during this pandemic.
As everyone else has, Lori. So I really look forward to talking with you about this topic.
Yeah. So can you talk with us a little bit about what infant and early childhood mental health consultation is, and specifically what that means for the state of New Jersey right now? Because I know that at the center you are always engaging in innovative programs to serve the community. So can you tell us about that?
Certainly. And yes, it is a mouthful. And we often see the acronym IECMHC, which stands for Infant Early Childhood Mental Health Consultation. And what that means, and it's the work that many of us have done for a long, long time, it is the support for adults who are serving children ages 0 through 5. And really where those stress behaviors or concerns become challenging, or I like to say disruptive. And really, it's the focus on the adults because, as we'll talk about, this work is based in relationships. So here in the state, we follow loosely the model from the Center for Excellence at Georgetown University. And it is a model that is is very collaborative, where the consultant, it brings all the parties together, the educators, the family, and provide a view for a child or children. Now, unfortunately, in many of you as well, they think, ooh, mental health. You know, are you diagnosing babies? You know, we sometimes tongue-in-cheek use the picture of a baby on a Freudian sofa in an analysis. However, infant early childhood mental health focuses on the foundations of what will go right in building strong relational and emotional skills in children. And so we focus on what happens early matters.
Okay.
From in utero through development, and focusing on how that development unfolds within relationships. Of course, life happens, right? So the consultation may also be holding situations where trauma has impacted the family and therefore experienced by the children. And we always keep culture in the forefront of how we look at where the relationships begin, how they're organized, and how they support the children and the development. And all of that is within reflective space.
Okay. So it sounds like what you're describing, it's almost like we're thinking about, say, early intervention, where you're looking at ways to impact a situation positively at an early age, so that that child has the benefit of an opportunity to get headed onto a better path at a very, very young age, possibly preventing situations in the future by catching something early. So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And often we work hand in hand with the early intervention professionals.
Mhm.
And many consultations remain in that reflective support in the classroom, in childcare,
Right.
or so there's so many different avenues.
And I love the way that you're describing the reflective piece in the classroom, because I know, my years as a teacher, and with a lot of the programs that I work with now, you've got these really dedicated, committed early childhood educators, and they're having some struggles with a particular child, and they're trying their hardest to figure out how to provide what that child needs to thrive in their classroom. Sometimes they're just not quite sure. So it sounds like you are, helping to advance their knowledge in a way that's going to be beneficial to them. So is this a new service that's available in New Jersey? Can you tell us a little bit about how this works?
Absolutely. No, it is not new. And so at the center where I am employed, our team has been working under the label of SEFI, Socio-Emotional Formation Initiative, for almost 5 years now. And we've been able to support private childcare that referrals come to us from the rating system and the QIS, so Grow New Jersey Kids. We expand that really. Any director of a child care center, if they feel they have a need, can reach out, and we can either provide the consultation or refer them to resources. And in the future, we will also be supporting or looking to support Head Start and the Department of Education classrooms. However, those teams also provide consultation through their professional staff in a variety of ways. So it is not a new service. We're doing our best now to increase the awareness of the availability and access. It's just really because the professionals that provide this type of support, the consultation, in the state of New Jersey, it is very limited, and we're trying to increase that capacity.
Okay, so you're really capacity building to be able to have more people who can provide this support. That's excellent. Now, you mentioned child care center directors can reach out to you. And do you provide services also to family child care providers who work with a small group of children in their home?
Great question. We absolutely do. In fact, on our team of consultants, all of us are well equipped to support FCCs. However, two of our consultants have been very busy doing just that. So yes, we are available and have been supporting
Oh,
family child care centers.
great, great. And I'm thinking, in my experience, many of our family childcare providers in New Jersey, because of our incredible diversity, their first and most comfortable language is Spanish. So I'm just wondering, do you provide services in Spanish?
Yes, we do. We have on our team Spanish-speaking consultants. And we aren't limited right now geographically because of the virtual nature of handling our responsibilities. So we are able to provide consultation virtually, and that has helped our support of the family child care providers, as well as supporting them in their first language.
Yes, I imagine that you're experiencing a similar thing that we are at the Technical Assistance Center, where um, not having to spend hours every week in the car has allowed you to be more creative and flexible in how you use your time to be able to reach, more people who need your services. So that's great. Can you tell us a little bit about, how does someone get to become an early childhood mental health consultant? What does it take to do that? I'm thinking about people who might be interested in it as a career path, or just curious about, who is this person that's reaching out to them either virtually or in the future, coming into their program.
Mhm. Yes, I would love to find out if anyone is interested in hearing more. Typically, Lori, a consultant is a clinician. So they hold a license either as an LPC or in social work. And the reason for that is on a consultation, there, as I had mentioned, are a variety of situations, really what's happening with a child that may be presented. So the ability of an individual to have the clinical background, licensing, and experience, it assists not only with possibly if an intervention is needed and a referral for resources for the child, however, also considering, as I mentioned, most of our work is with the adults who support who serve the children. But it's also working with adults, providing that understanding, that empathetic listening, the ability to reflect on what an individual brings to their work with children, maybe experiences in their own childhood, maybe such things like ghosts and angels in the nursery, understanding what it is that characterizes the relationship that they have with children and maybe a particular child or with other adults themselves. A lot of times things get stirred up when we meet with the families that we're serving in childcare. So clinician, and then often there are individuals who may have education, a master's level in education or psychology, who've had the opportunity to be on the front line with the families, with the educators in the classrooms. And so they also may be consultants, and then spending time developing the ways of knowing for infant mental health principles. Understanding what I mentioned initially, the foundations of development happening within the context of a relationship, and how to understand what happens early matters, brain development.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to tell you, there is one key characteristic of a consultant that can be developed through courses and book learning. However, it's really about those ways of being. So it's identified as a consultative stance. And I mentioned, so if an individual is presenting in a way of being an empathetic listener, being able to wonder, being able to take in many perspectives, not projecting that they are the expert, but weighing in on all the other important individuals in this child's life, being able to be comfortable on a child's level, you know, understanding, right, the wide range of expression of emotions and behaviors that a child might display. So that's my best definition
Okay.
of
Yeah.
a mental health consultant.
It's funny. It's reminding me of a conversation I had earlier this week with a child care center director who was talking with me about her search process and finding new staff, and talking about really the ways of being making the biggest difference that she has found. She said that, you can have an education and a degree, but if you don't have that comfort level and that, you know, wondering and that curiosity and that willing to get down with the children and be at their level, that education doesn't serve the best interest of the children. So yeah, it sounds like
Right,
it's
well put.
the same thing. And you've got people kind of coming into it from a clinical background, and then you've got people coming into it from a master's level education in early childhood education, for instance, and, you know, years of experience, and coming, you know, both able to come into this field kind of from different directions. But yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, so
absolutely.
can you tell us a little bit about the goals of infant and early childhood mental health? Like if someone were to contact you and say, you know, we're really struggling with this child's behavior, you know, he's making it very difficult for us to implement activities in our classroom. His behavior is really out of control. You know, what is your process of how, you know, taking on a situation, and what are your goals in
Mhm.
resolving that?
Well, I'll work a little backwards. The
Okay.
quick answer would be to reduce the risk of expulsion.
Okay.
And the uh, philosophical answer is to identify what's in the best interest of the child or children. So taking that and then working backwards, and to inform everyone, if you're not aware, the rate of expulsion and suspension of preschoolers across the nation is greater than, and this is as reported by 0 to 3, and Dr. Walter Gillingham and his work at Yale University, and our center's work on preschool expulsion through Dr. Jerry Costa and Dr. Caitlin Mulcahy. That rate is greater than the expulsion rate from kindergarten through 12th grade. And when I often in groups outside of early childhood education and services, adults are appalled. Like, well, who would expel a preschooler or a child? Exactly. However, we see, right, that disruptive behaviors, a child who is dysregulated can cause so much concern, can push many adults' hot buttons, so
Yes.
they end up flipping their lid. So now you have 2 or more individuals stuck in those protective
Mhm.
behaviors or defensive
Mhm.
behaviors, and then things just escalate.
Mhm.
So the goal is to begin a relationship with the adults who support the children, understand how that adult is feeling, offer them space to safely express what this is all meaning for them, how they view what is happening, and then work with all of those perspectives to reframe behavior. Often, as consultants, we are then taking pieces where these behaviors may be pointing to for meaning. So, in other words, is it a developmental expectation? You know, 2-year-olds should be considered that they might bite. Why? Because their language is developing. They don't have a way of expressing on how to get their needs met. So, are there developmental expectations? Are there developmental delays? Is there trauma or a traumatic event that has impacted this child and family? What is it about the relationships that are holding this child and or children when we talk about classroom climate? What, you know, what is happening during transitions? What is happening during a large group expectation of the age group in that classroom? So there's all those different pieces that then become material for a theory or a hypothesis, and we never stick right to maybe our first hypothesis, but it's even more than a team effort, because as we draw all that together, I have witnessed, and this is why I get so excited and passionate about this work, is that I see everyone involved grow, learn, build confidence. So the end result that I see becomes that adults are able to find calm, they're able to find confidence. And so it's not a one-off. It's not, okay, things worked out, in this situation, with this child and this experience. No, the adults then down the road, a year, 2 years, next month, go, oh, I recall if I focus on changing the transition expectation or whatever it might be. So the goal, to answer your question, then becomes helping adults move from a reactive impulse or interaction to a responsive. And that can be with the children, with other adults.
Right, right. Oh, so I love the way that you describe that, because it sounds like what the consultants do has the very best ripple effect. It's not just being able to provide services that will impact this one child who is having some struggles succeeding in the environment, but that the learning that goes along with the adults, being able to have this reflective time, feeling so supported, gaining some new knowledge and some skills, it allows them to take that forward for all of those other children that they'll work with in the future who may have similar or even different challenges of being comfortable in the environment. And so they're able to use that to benefit so many more children.
Yes, ripple effect, definitely. Exponential is a word sometimes that I land on. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that it probably makes the staff, either the teachers, the assistant teachers, the family child care provider, feel so much more confident and competent when they are able to provide every child in their group with exactly what they need to thrive. Because, like we all know, nobody gets into early childhood education to become a millionaire. People get into it for the love of children, and I think there's nothing more frustrating than wanting to provide a wonderful opportunity for a child and feeling like there's something that's preventing you from being able to do that. And so you're providing that opportunity for this staff member to be able to reach every child, and not leaving any of them out.
Yes, absolutely, Lori. And it's what is so important is that adults who are so passionate, I mean, so many of the teachers and directors, teaching assistants, they commit their life
Yes.
taking care of the children. And what you just mentioned is what I find so frequently, and all of us consultants find, is the adult is blaming themselves.
Yes.
What am
Yes.
I doing wrong? I'm not the best person for this child.
Right.
When it it is
Right.
not that
Right.
at all. It's
Yeah.
taking in the why. Why now? What is happening now with
Right.
this child
Right.
that may be different from the way
Right.
this child was 2 months ago, last week?
Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, I hate to admit it, but being perfectly honest here, when I was a director, there was a child that we expelled, and I just wonder if we had had the support of early childhood mental health consultants, could that narrative have played out differently? I really think that it could have, but we didn't have what we needed when this child, became so incredibly aggressive, was throwing chairs in the preschool classroom.
Right.
And, I remember crying with the teachers as we were at our wits' end in terms of
Sure.
what we needed to do, and feeling so incredibly defeated that we weren't able to meet his needs. So I'm so happy and so excited that you all are here for all of us. That when people are having these kind of struggles in New Jersey with the young children in their care, that you are able to help change that narrative, to move that needle, to help that adult help the child succeed.
Yes.
I think that is so important. How do people find out about um, or reach out to get the services if they're feeling like, oh my gosh, you're talking about this child in my program? Like,
Hmm.
I would love to be able to have somebody help me figure out how to work with this child more positively. So what would people need to do about?
That's a really good point, because the Center for Autism and Early Childhood Mental Health is not the only game in town, but it's a large one.
Okay.
So, I mean, there are individuals in private practice. There are, groups that provide services to families. There are clinicians in pediatric work, of course, but when it comes to childcare and supporting the large number of children who are attending some sort of early care, 0 to 5, it would be the SEFI services.
Mhm.
And the way to contact us at Montclair is to use our email. So SEFI, SEFI at montclair.edu. And our coordinator then is able to provide the referral form.
Mhm.
And I am the contact person that then looks at the referral and assigns it to a consultant. Again, it used to be geographically. Right now, since we're working virtually, um, we have a host of consultants who are available anywhere in the state. And I'm really pleased to say that the center has been provided funding to expand our team of consultants, actually to double the size. So it is wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
There's so much work to be done, and access
Mhm.
be made available.
Right, right. Oh, that's great. To think that, the good work that you do can be amplified by being able to have more people available to do it. Can you share some other examples of times that, you might be called into service of, situations where a child's maybe exhibiting certain behaviors that would lead the adult to say, "Oh, I could call the center. I think that they're the people who can help me with this."
Well, actually, there are other areas that can be enlisted, and so we've been able to work at a program level. So
Mhm.
let's say, and we have many experiences here where a director is concerned about the overall climate at the
Okay.
center. Maybe there's a situation where there's been a loss and there is grief that is
Okay.
experienced by the professionals, maybe from a family, a child. So our work does not have to begin with a singular child focus.
Oh, that's great to know.
We're able to, as consultants come in, gain perspective,
Mhm.
provide in that particular example I gave, loss and grief discussions, the ability to understand how grief is experienced by adults and children.
Right.
Or the climate could be that the center has experienced a change in administration or a change in expectations, or there's just something that's impacting the climate. So
Okay.
that is one way.
Mhm.
And also another way is to support a director individually. Because we know, and you just referred to your own experiences, that often things occur like a pandemic, and this is much of the work that we're currently doing, where the leadership is overwhelmed and the
Right.
leadership needs a consultative stance from someone to be able to share in a safe space
Okay.
how difficult things are, and then how to support the relationships that they have with the families and with staff.
Mm.
Ultimately, most referrals that are at the center level come in with an individual child as the focus. And we quickly find as consultants that when we, have our initial meetings and observations, that there is a classroom component. Maybe developmentally, there are things that are being stirred up, particularly by that one student, but other students are also experiencing either unknown expectations or too great of expectations, or relationships among the peers within the classroom. So most of the time, our individual child consultation also includes those observations, those partnering with the teacher, the staff, the teacher, the assistant teacher, in being able to look globally across the classroom, and the end result being, what you and I had discussed, that it's just not a one-time learning experience.
Mhm.
It builds the professional formation of
Right. Right.
each individual professional.
Right.
So yes, it can be, and then the referral can come through a parent asking the center staff, the director, or the teacher, please help us. We have some concerns.
Mhm.
And I don't want to ignore the fact that consultants may not refer to diagnosis or early intervention. Um, we may end up there in our consultation, and then what we do is we support naming, locating services, resources
Okay.
for the child and for the family. Even though we are licensed clinicians,
Mhm.
we do not provide therapy
Okay.
as a consultant.
Mhm.
We, um, you know, uh, view, observe, gather our information, work with the many professionals, and then come to a conclusion as to what is best needed to serve this child.
Right. Right. So it sounds like what you do can really be um, thought about in so many different ways and so many different levels of supporting the social emotional climate within the program, whether it's working with the director, whether it's working with the teachers, the family, and figuring out as a team in a collaborative way how to create positive change to improve the climate, improve the outcomes for how people are working with different expectations in classrooms and that kind of thing. So, yeah,
Mhm.
do you find any barriers to utilizing the consultation? Are there barriers for programs?
The main barrier, and this is something that Caitlin Mulcahy and I discussed in some focus groups that informed an evaluation program, and I'll speak to that in a second. The main barrier is the stigma to mental health.
Okay.
So a colleague of mine yesterday said that we should campaign to change the term infant mental health to relational wellness. And it was and it was a aha moment for me. And I'm like, yes, that is what it's about. And we have seen on social media and on news programs that there is a stigma in our society about mental health.
Right.
No one wants to think of their child or themselves as crazy. And so it's having opportunities such as this one for me and for all of us to inform that infant and early childhood mental health is not identifying that there's something mentally difficult that a child is struggling with. It's focusing on all of the factors that will build strong relational and emotional health.
Right.
And then the other barrier is being aware that these services are available.
Yeah, I think that you brought up something that, I'm being very transparent here. I, have been in the field of early childhood education for many, many years. I'm what they call a seasoned professional. But I did take a pause at one point. I was home, spending some time with my young children. And it was during that time that I think the infant early childhood mental health lingo and discussion started, to be talked about. And when I came back, that was new terminology for me to hear about this. And I was like, infant mental health. Like I was thinking about, the stereotypical picture of psychotherapy, the baby on the couch next to Sigmund Freud. And I couldn't wrap my mind around it when I heard it for the first time. And I think that relational wellness describes exactly what it is that's coming out of the work that you do, is that social emotional learning. And just thinking about right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, and how important those relationships are, and how critically important it is for people to be able to have those relationship building skills. So if you're able to impact that when a child is an infant or preschooler or toddler, that trajectory of that child's life could be so enhanced because you've supported the adults in supporting that child's needs at a very young age. So yeah. But that stigma, I know that I see those signs, that stigma-free zone. And when I first saw those signs, I didn't know that they were talking about, this is a place where mental health is not stigmatized. I think you see those a lot when you go on college campuses.
Yes.
I think it's important to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you are not alone in that initial thought of mental health. So
yeah. I just
the
remember, the first
education
time
continues, right?
I heard about it, and I was just like, oh, you just that's with the picture in my mind, psychotherapy, which didn't seem to fit with someone who's a toddler, is still in diapers. So yeah, but what you're describing is you're really working with the adults to support the needs of the children.
Yeah. And just briefly, the other barrier, because I want to validate how the adults caring for children, the parent, the family, the caregivers, the educators, often are fearful that they're doing, as we said, they're doing something wrong. But what's wrong with me that I can't handle this?
Right.
I should be doing better. And I want to give permission to individuals to say, let that go and reach out for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, and it doesn't mean that it's a difficulty that you have or a weakness.
Mhm.
Relationships are dynamic, and there's no right or wrong. We need to be able to be flexible and understand that what I call, sometimes it takes a cavalry or a village
Mhm.
to meet the need and address what it is to help the child, the children, and the environment that they're in.
Right, right. And yes, I think that that is so profound that you can feel defeated as an early
Right.
childhood professional. Like this is your profession. This is you've been to the trainings, you worked hard, you've gotten educated, you've observed, you changed your practice, and you're coming up stuck. And so
Yeah.
you can feel what am I, what's wrong with me kind of thing. You had mentioned something earlier, which I'd love to kind of circle back to, but you had just mentioned it briefly. Could you just describe a little bit for people who might not be familiar with the concept? You had talked about ghosts or angels in the nursery, because I think that's so important to think about and to be aware of.
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. And it's concepts that have really supported and been integrated in my work. So Selma Freiberg, if anyone's looking for a reference, wrote about ghosts in the nursery. And what she referred to was that we all bring along with us in our interactions with children, whether it be our own or those that we care for, we bring along what had been parenting experiences behind us, our our family, our caregivers, um, foster care, um, kinship care, um, and it's those feelings, because it's more than knowing of experiences. It's how we've been shaped. Maybe understanding that in the past, a child needed to be given up to outside care. Um, or maybe there was inadequacies felt by the previous parenting group. We're talking generational
Mm,
things in many, many cases. We are talking about racially stirred up, oppressive um, things that really paint who we all are. So then we become caregivers, and of course, those are things that we may not consciously be
oh,
aware of, but through conversation, right?
mhm.
And then on the surface, we often hear individuals say, "Oh my word, I just heard what I was told as a child, and it came out of my
Yes,
mouth."
there's my mother's voice coming out of my mouth. Yes, yes.
So, and that's sort of a superficial connection to ghosts in the nursery, because they can be very deeply embedded.
Okay.
However, Alicia Lieberman, who is still around, but she's an amazing professional. She wrote about angels in the nursery, and so those are our nurturers. Those are the individuals that we think about, that unconditional love, who also have created who we are, right? And there's so much power in sitting with another adult and reflecting, who was the person that nurtured you? What was it about that person? And who are you now? How do you use those? Or can you access those types of ways of being with this particular child or children in your classroom? And then the same factors in when we're doing consultation with families.
Okay.
So I encourage anyone who has a passion in this work to find that those articles and inform themselves that we just don't become. And if there's anything that really is the platform for our work at the center, really two things. Initially, it's what Dr. Jerry Costa developed is professional formation, taking the ways of knowing, the training, the knowledge, articles, our degrees, our experiences there, combining them with ways of doing practice. So consultants are right there alongside wherever the adults are, in the homes, in the classrooms, in meetings, but then really wrapping it together with the ways of being. And that's
Yeah. Yes. So everything is kind of integrated into a
yes.
very cohesive whole. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Can you tell me this? What are the strategies that are in place right now to be able to develop and sustain infant and early childhood mental health consultation for New Jersey's child care workforce, like for as we move forward in the future? You talked about that you're increasing capacity by having some more people come on board.
Yes. It is the most exciting time, at least in my career. So the focus on expanding is coming from a number of funders. Initially, we are working with the Burke Foundation in funding an evaluation program of our model. And so what that means is what individuals have seen and experienced as SEFI will be evaluated in 4 counties. It has been launched for a year in 4 counties, and we'll be collecting data that will show us the strength, very optimistically on my part, but I know there's going to be many strengths identified. Primarily, I think we're going to see that consultation is able to reduce the stress in the adults so that they can therefore be available to reduce the stress in children and become responsive. So we'll also see that these skills, you called it the ripple effect, I call it exponential. I think that we will also be able to, through the research and the data, identify that the skills are sustainable.
Okay.
That through the theory of change, adults are able to change and gain confidence.
Yes.
So that is happening, and alongside that, we are also still operating at the level of referrals throughout the state through the Grow New Jersey Kids rating system, the QIS, family child care programs, and even faith-based centers have reached out to us for consultation. So we're trying to be as accessible as possible,
Yeah.
and the team will expand.
Yeah. So what you're describing is a system that can become so sustainable because you're not doing a one and done. You're not providing an hour or two of information at a training and then saying, okay, go at it, but you are you're coming alongside someone and helping them be reflective in a relationship that is ongoing to be able to meet the needs of the program, so, and the adults that are in that program. I think that's great. And the idea that you're increasing capacity by having more professionals come on board, and your description of what you're doing, just the research, and then using the research to inform your future, is so much of what we talk about with Grow New Jersey Kids, that whole CQI, the continuous
Yes.
quality improvement, where you look at what you're doing and you figure out what's going well and what you might do to make it better, and you're always improving in that way. So I mean, that this holds so much promise to the children, the families, the early childhood workforce in New Jersey. I know that I have had the opportunity during this pandemic to participate in some virtual learning opportunities with people from throughout the country. And we were able, when I described what you at the center were doing to support the workforce through your conversations for, connection and calm that you've been offering, and people have just been amazed, like, why can't our state do that? So I
Oh,
think that, what you're doing is so incredibly impactful, and especially the sustainability and the, the
mhm.
ripple or the exponential effect, or, whatever you want to call it. It's just magnifying, it's amplifying, what the good work. So that's wonderful. Jean, is there anything else you want to talk with us about with infant and early childhood mental health consultation? You have provided so much good information. I am going to make sure that when we release this podcast, that we have your email address at the center prominently displayed, so people can know how to reach out and
Great.
activate those services if they feel there might be a need. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Lori. This has been such an easy and wonderful time for me to spend with you. I just had a thought that I should describe. I mentioned the evaluation program that we're evaluating our model. Our model is known as a short-term model. So the consultation is actually 6 to 8 visits over
Okay.
the span of 4 to 5 months. And the reason I think I need to emphasize that is, I mentioned there are other
Right.
organizations that provide infant and early childhood mental health consultation. Many of those have clinicians embedded in their system, like Head Start.
Right.
It is one of their standards that they have access to mental health consultation. Sometimes those individuals are full-time on staff. I did that for a number of years for a Head Start agency. Many times they contract out. The same goes for pediatric groups. And so I just wanted to clarify that for anyone listening to this thinking, well, I make a referral and then 2 years down the road. No, it is short term.
Mhm.
And that's what we're evaluating as well. I also just want to mention that we are very focused on diversity. Our state is extremely diverse,
Mhm.
housing many, many different cultures, many, many different marginalized populations. We are making every effort that our team models the diversity that we find in the state. It It is difficult at times because, as I mentioned in the beginning, there's not a large group
Mhm.
of clinicians who are trained and specialized in infant mental health principles
Right.
and have been supporting the early childhood profession and families. However, that is very prominent in the goals that we have, and we feel that it's important that centers that access us for referrals will be able to identify with the consultant in a way that is comfortable and safe for them, and that means a diverse group of professionals.
Right, right. Yes, I think that that's important to, as you said, to honor the diversity in our state by looking at ways to bring more people into this field, which is really, I mean, the field of infant early childhood mental health seems to really be in its infancy in terms of the number of people who are trained to do this work right now. But I think that at the center, you're doing a lot to increase that, you know, through the
Yes.
fellowship and different opportunities to have more people become more aware, and to really encourage people to look at this as a career path. So yes, oh, that's
Well,
wonderful.
and excuse me, I would be really remiss if I didn't mention that there is a professional home in the New Jersey Association for Infant Mental Health for professionals, and there is a credential, an endorsement for all professionals who work with children and their families 0 through 3, because it is infant mental health. And I am pleased to have had the privilege of being the endorsement coordinator for the state for 5 years.
Oh, that's wonderful. So I'm going to make sure that we put that information in as well in case somebody wants to, you know, start on that
Absolutely.
journey. So
Mm.
could someone, for instance, who's a head teacher or a child care center director, that there would be potentially a path for them to look at becoming more knowledgeable in this and maybe eventually become endorsed?
They may meet the requirements for endorsement currently. There are 4 categories, each relying on training, employment, education, and participation in reflective supervision.
Oh,
So there will be an email address where anyone who is looking for information
oh, that's
can
great.
contact.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Jean. I really appreciate you joining me today so that we could talk about this. You've been a wealth of information, and I know that the early childhood community who gets a chance to listen to this will be excited to hear that there's someone out there who's got their back in a way to help, you know, with the social emotional challenges that are happening right now as a result of the pandemic, but also moving forward, that's, you know, available to them.